In this episode of the IA Talks AI, I speak with Mr. Greg Clark MP, the Chair of the Commons Science, Innovation and Technology Committee. Mr. Clark, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. We really appreciate it. We're here to talk about the Science, Innovation and Technology Committee's inquiry into AI governance. And can I just say the timing of this inquiry was absolutely spot on. The inquiry started in October of 2022, and then 1 month later, ChatGPT happened, and we've all seen the huge interest and excitement that's followed. So it's a real watershed moment in the history of artificial intelligence. So if I could start by asking you if personally you had any idea that this was coming, and then secondly, if what happened with ChatGPT had any bearing on how the committee approached its inquiry.
Well, I wish I had that degree of prescience, but no, they didn't tip me off that it was coming. But it has, I think, increased interest. I mean, across the world and in this country, more people than ever are talking about AI, and the questions of how it's governed obviously surge up as well. So it was good timing in that respect. We try, our duty as a committee is to try to keep pace with and where we can be ahead of developments in technology. So that's why we embarked on it. But the interest has grown.
Excellent. And the committee has published an interim report at the end of August. Are you able to tell us about some of the main findings of the report?
Yes. So one of the things that we say in our report's a cross-party unanimous report of members. We say that it's important, given the explosive pace of the development of AI, that the thoughts as to how it is governed need to keep pace, both from a positive point of view, that there are huge opportunities here. We are one of the countries in the world that has the largest number of AI startups, AI companies here. So we want to be able to reap the rewards of that. But there are some questions of safety, which the government has recognised in convening this international summit that's going to take place at the beginning of November. And so what we've said is that we need to decide what we're going to do as a country and sometimes as a world in respect of some very important governance challenges. And we set out 12 of them in the report.
Are you able to tell us about a couple of those challenges that you
identified? I will. So the report is available on the committee's website. And I won't go through all 12, but if I take one or two of them, the questions of bias, for example. AI, in many ways, AI is not new. It's applying massively increasing computing power to data sets which are increasingly large and are capable of being analysed. And then from that, making either predictions or suggestions to guide behaviour. Now, what follows from that is that the data on which AI is trained will have a material influence on its outcomes. Now, here we are sitting in Parliament, and over the course of many years, over 100 years, we parliamentarians have been ensuring that unfair biases against women, for example, should not be legal. One of the challenges is that the data on which AI is trained could embed some of these biases and actually keep them hidden. An example of that, if an AI is suggesting who might be the right recruits for a job or for an industry, they may draw on the historic patterns of recruitment to and work in that industry.
And perpetuate those biases.
Which is something that we, as all your viewers and listeners will know, have taken steps to outlaw. So that's one of them. And so public policy, having battled on these things for years, can't in the face of AI say, well, it is what it is. We have to find ways to prevent that happening. Another thing that is obviously of great concern in politics, but in other areas as well, is what we call the misrepresentation challenge, which is to say that the technology through AI is already developed to an extent that my voice can be sampled and my image as well, and can be applied to a script that could be saying outrageous things that I would never say, but make me sound as if I'm saying them and perhaps even look as if I'm saying them. And obviously in the context of a general election campaign, that could be disastrous. But also in financial services, for example, a lot of voice recognition technology is used as a means of security for people's personal financial accounts. That's the ability to, as it were, imitate, clone, to fake someone's voice is a big challenge there. So what we call the misrepresentation challenge is important. And perhaps just to give another example that people in the financial services sector will be familiar with, we call it the liability challenge. And it's the question of whether technology, in this case intellectual property that's developed, whether the use of it, whether those supplying the IP have some responsibility for how it's used by others, whether bought or licensed. Now, of course, in financial services, this is very well known. KYC, know your customer, is a very well understood and has a huge resource against making sure that if a bank opens a bank account for someone, it's not someone that's going to use it for illegal or nefarious purposes. The question of whether you develop an AI model and have any responsibility as to who uses it and for what is a question that we need to know the answer. It's been resolved in one way in financial services. The question applies to AI. So they're 3 of the 12 challenges that we say need quickly to have a response on the part of people in government, including in the UK.
So turning to regulation, does the committee have a view on the government's AI white paper that was published recently and the direction of travel that we now see in the UK versus, for example, the EU with their approach and the EU AI Act and the approach now being taken in the United States? Does the committee have a view on this?
Well, it's an interim report, so we've got an interim view as befits it. And our interim view, pending hearing other evidence, is that the government is right to take an approach that wants to encourage innovation. We're very well placed in this country, as I said earlier, in hosting one of the largest clusters of AI firms in the world. When we get it right, we have a good reputation for governance in different areas. And the government's approach of making use of existing regulators, whether they are the FCA in financial services, or Ofcom, for example, or in the field of medicine and health, the MHRA, they have expertise and practice, and working with and through them, we think is the right thing to do. That said, we think there needs to be an acceleration in pace, and there is a danger that even though our approach we think has merit, with a general election coming next year, if we don't take powers to make sure regulators have the necessary statutory authority where it's missing, it could be that the EU through the AI Act or various actions by, for example, the US administration, whether they are executive orders or congressional legislation, inadvertently we could lose ground, because if we don't take the steps now to legislate, then it won't be until probably the middle of 2025, 2 years or more from now, and that in the development of AI is a long time. So we do think there's an important decision that the government needs to make about taking focused powers. We're not talking about a kind of vast AI bill, but to make sure before this window closes with the general election that there are powers taken. And we think that should be done on a cross-party basis wherever possible, so that people can have confidence that this way of governing will be maintained whoever wins the election.
And I understand that the government has to respond to the interim report, I believe, in October. And I know it's early days, but has there been any indications so far as to how the report's been received?
Yes, we've been pleased. I've been pleased, and my colleagues have been pleased with the reception of the report. I think it is regarded, as I think it should be, as a serious, non-partisan contribution to how we should govern AI. We took evidence from a lot of distinguished people. The government are reflecting on it and welcomed its publication. It was notable, given that I think this should be cross-party, that the official opposition, the Labour Party, welcomed it and said that it would shape their policy thinking on AI. So that's exactly what we thought and what we hoped. We've been pleased that commentators have recognised that the 12 challenges that we've set out and the approach seems to get it right, as it were. So I hope it will be influential, and that part of the point of the timing, given the government has to respond to its own white paper in the autumn, is that this can shape that response and also shape the summit that is going to take place in Bletchley Park at the beginning of November.
And finally, if I could just ask you about the inquiry's next steps.
Yes.
What's happening? Are there any plans to engage the sector regulators? I know the Investment Association members are very interested in what the FCA does.
Yes.
Is there anything you can tell us about that?
Absolutely. So I've said that our conclusions are interim conclusions. The committee is going to meet our counterparts in Washington, D.C. to understand their approach to regulation. We've taken evidence from other regulatory jurisdictions. And we have a session of the committee that will take place in October with the 4 principal regulatory authorities that are in the front line, including the Financial Conduct Authority, but also, for example, the Information Commissioner's Office, the Competition and Markets Authority, and Ofcom. So that'll be a public evidence session in which we'll be questioning them on their readiness and their proposed approach. I've already met as chair of the committee with Nicola Ratti, who runs, as you know, the FCA, and Mr. Ratti gave quite a significant speech on the FCA's approach to AI earlier in the summer, and obviously we reflect on that in our final conclusions.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ms. Clark, for your time. We wish you well with the rest of the inquiry, and we look forward to the final report in due course.
Thank you very much indeed.